All righty. I think it's a good time to get this show on the road. Welcome everybody. Welcome to the Navigating the 45L Home Tax Credit webinar. We're excited to have you, and we're excited to get to speak about this topic. Something that we're passionate about, and we really do believe that this is um, representing the American taxpayer is a service that we don't take lightly, and these types of incentives, specifically 45L or some other incentives out there, that they're uniquely American, and we're proud to be able to contribute in this space. So we're excited. We have a lot of good information to share with you guys today. It's going to get into the history. It's going to talk about some of the technical components. And at the end of this, we will have an opportunity for questions and answers. That said, we want to make this as informative and engaging as possible. So if you guys have questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. We'll try to answer them as they come up in real time, or we'll wait to the end if we just can't get to them. But feel free to engage with us. That's what these webinars are all about, right? So with that, I think we can get started. We will introduce ourselves here in a little bit, but first I want to tell you a bit about Leighton and who we are. So Leighton is an international tax consulting firm, right? We're not a CPA firm. We don't file taxes, but we specialize in a few technical incentives, such as the 45L tax credit, 179D tax deduction, research and development tax credit. We have a grants and incentives program to help on the other side of that, the funding side of things. And look, we love CPAs and we cherish our CPA relationships, and we typically work side by side with CPAs to ensure that we're putting the taxpayers in the best possible position from a tax standpoint. So look, we've been around for over 25 years. We're in 14 countries and growing. And we're definitely unique in this space that we offer these incentives for commercial real estate. So who am I? My name is Cedric James. I'm a senior project manager here at Leighton. I've been in this space for almost a decade. And just personally, my wife and I have 3 beautiful kids. That's where I spend all of my free time, is hanging out with them. We also own 2 businesses, and we are also in the real estate space. So we're a real estate investment company and a short-term rental company as well, that we have 3 assets in Texas and 2 in Guadalajara, Mexico. So if you're visiting Houston and you need a nice 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom, beautifully designed, or Guadalajara, please let me know. But that's a little bit about myself, and I'll let Sean take it away to talk about himself.
Hi, I'm Sean. I'm the Leighton's 45L tax consultant. My background I've been in residential energy efficiency for 7 years now. I've been a HERS rater and Energy Star rater for 4 years. I've worked here in Colorado, helping one of the first communities adopt zero energy ready homes as a building code. So that's my background. I live up here in the Colorado mountains with some cats and my fiance, and yeah, just enjoy the outdoor world as much as I can.
Yeah, Sean is a very modest guy, but I can honestly and truthfully say there's not very many people in this world of 45L tax credit that has the experience and technical expertise that Sean does. So he is an amazing kind of rock star in this world, and we're super happy to have him on board here at Leighton. That wasn't too much for you, Sean, was it?
You flatter me.
All right, guys. So let's go over the agenda for today, what you can expect. So we're going to be talking about this home credit, the 45L. How does it benefit developers, multifamily developers, single-family home developers as well can benefit from this? Some of the building types we'll go over. how we quantify and qualify and certify the results. There's been some big changes to this legislation as part of the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. We'll be reviewing that as well. Um, and then we'll also end with some case studies that we've personally delivered, and kind of round it out with some question and answers. All right, so let's get into it. What is 45L? It was first enacted into law as part of the Energy Policy Act of 2005. So it's been around for quite some time. And the concept here, the principle is the US government wanted to incentivize residential developers to make more energy efficient spaces. So they wanted to decrease our carbon footprint. They wanted to decrease our dependence on foreign oil. And so, how does the U.S. government, how does any government do that, right? They can either um, penalize people for not doing it or incentivize them for doing it. So that's where 45L comes into play. We'll get into a little bit of background here. Like I said, it was part of the 2005 Energy Policy Act. It actually expired in 2021, but then they uh, extended it in 2022 as part of the Inflation Reduction Act. And so currently, it is slated to expire 2032, which is great for planning. That's a long runway that we have to help the American taxpayer. Um, as far as kind of what the value is for 45L, we'll get into that next. So we call it the legacy 45L. That's kind of the pre-Inflation Reduction Act terminology that we use. So you'll see that throughout, and you'll hear that throughout because of the expansion of 45L from the energy for the IRA, changed this so much. It's basically two different products. So the legacy is what we'll be talking about first, and then we'll also get into the post IRA. But for the legacy, it is up to $2,000 per dwelling. Okay. And for the post IRA, it is up to $5,000 per dwelling. It's a big difference between 2,000 and 5,000. So they did expand the breadth of incentive here, but they also expanded the criteria to qualify. Sean, do you have anything that you would like to add?
Just a quick note on the timeline is just when it expired in 2021, as part of the Inflation Reduction Act, they retroactively approved 2021 for the 45L tax credit under the same legacy rules of 2022 and before. So $2,000 per credit or per dwelling unit for any buildings built to those standards in 2021.
Yeah, it's a good point too. There's a 3-year look back here. Similar to any other, amending style benefit, you get 3 tax years to look back. So 2021 is available. Thank you for bringing that up. All right. So the types of buildings that are eligible for 45L. It's all about residential buildings, but specifically, right, we want to just give you some examples here. Single family homes are eligible for 45L. Okay. Multifamily homes eligible for 45L. So think about apartment buildings, townhomes, senior living facilities, student housing is a big one. Really any place that has a residential function. Also, mixed family projects can also qualify for 45L. So think about some of those buildings with, retail space at the bottom and, residential space on the top floors. Those can also qualify for 45L because it's based on a per door dwelling unit basis. All right. So first we want to start talking and go into some depth about the legacy 45L. Remember, that's that 3-year look back that we have, right? So post or pre-IRA legacy 45L. So some of the requirements are it has to be located within the United States, um, sold or first leased within the entity's amendment period, so that 3-year look back. And what we mean here by sold or first leased. So let's say you have a new construction building, all right, multifamily, 300 units, 3 stories or lower, and it began construction in 2019, but completed construction in 2020, and then all of the units in that building were sold or leased in 2020. This incentive in this example would be available in tax year 2020. Okay. Now, what if you had a situation where 50% of the rooms were sold or leased in 2020, and then 50% were sold or leased in 2021? Well, because this is based on a per dwelling unit, um, 50% would be available for a credit in 2020, while the other 50% would be available for credit in 2021. Okay. One important part of this is there is a 3-floor above grade maximum floor level for the legacy 45L. That cap is removed for future work. So for any projects that completed from 2023 moving forward, they removed that cap. But for the legacy 45L, there's a 3-floor above grade requirement. It also has to meet the energy savings threshold and be certified by a HERS rater. And then a site inspection has to be performed, confirming the energy efficient features that we use in our model are in use. And this is where Sean's expertise really shines. He's done a bunch of field inspections, thousands or at least hundreds of models. So I'll let him kind of speak to those thresholds and how we certify that.
Yeah. So the energy savings thresholds for Legacy 45L is that it has to be 50% less of a heating and cooling load than a reference home, which is based on 2006 international codes. If you're not familiar with the international code sets, every 3 years they update them. And on the energy efficiency side, they try to make them about 10% more efficient each year. Most municipalities, states, counties are already on 2015 or 2018 energy code cycles, which means most people building to modern energy standards are actually going to meet this 50% more efficient than 2006 code, just by virtue of building to the latest building codes.
Gotcha. And can you speak a little bit about the site inspection requirements as well?
Yeah, the site inspection requirements has to be by a ResNet certified person. So generally that's a HERS rater. And they, for larger projects, you can follow the sampling guidelines outlined by ResNet, which means you don't need to inspect every single building unit. You can do a certain subset of like units. And it's really just to confirm that what's in the energy model is actually being installed and done on site. So primarily looking at HVAC, insulation, if it's available, duct leakage testing, that sort of thing.
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks for clarifying. We'll kind of talk through our process next here, but wanted to paint the ground floor here. So, what do the certifications need? What's the process? So, first of all, we have to have the name, the address, telephone number of the eligible certifier. Okay, the address of the eligible building, and then the energy modeling showing that it meets the energy requirements outlined in Special Notice 2008-35. There also needs to be a statement of eligible certifier confirming that a field inspection was done, so that does have to happen, and that the energy savings inputs in the model were installed. And then lastly, there needs to be a statement by the certifier that the appliances meet the National Appliance Energy Conservation Act of 1987. Any clarity or any points that really need emphasis here, Sean?
No, that National Appliance Energy Act, Conservation Act of 1987 is one of those things where it was more onerous back in 2005 when they initially created the tax code. Now, almost any appliances, pretty much all appliances, are compliant with that.
That makes sense. So basically, that was originally intended to drive behavior, and the behavior that it was
Mhm.
originally intended to drive has been driven.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
got
It's
there. Okay.
it's worked.
Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and move on here and talk about how to accessing the credits going forward. So we were talking about the legacy 45L. Now we're going to talk about some of the requirements for 2023 moving forward. Okay. So major changes, the maximum credit increased, as you guys remember in that last, I think 3 slides ago, where it went from $2,000 per dwelling unit up to $5,000 per dwelling unit. Okay. Um, they removed the 3-story height restriction, which is a good thing because now high-rise apartments, high-rise condos are now eligible buildings for 45L. They also changed from being confirmed that the building was 50% more than a 2006 IECC model to requiring Energy Star and Zero Energy Home ready certifications. We will get into that here shortly, so I don't want to spend too much time on that number 2 because we have some slides dedicated to those 2 things. But that is a big change, right? Whereas in the legacy 45L, most of the buildings, like Sean was talking about, that are built to today's codes were passing Energy Star certification and Zero Energy Home ready homes. We're not quite there yet, right? There's still some behavior that needs to change in the industry in order for this just to be set in. Some codes, some city codes do have it where it's just about. I mean, there are basically already Energy Star, and other codes do not. So it's a case by case basis with the county and the city. Also, they removed the reductions in basis for lower income housing tax credit. So we could get into that as well. And then they added local prevailing wage requirements for multifamily building tax credits. Sean, I'll let you speak a little bit to that last point there.
Yeah. So under the Legacy 45L, the amounts were not dependent on if they were multifamily or single family. It was $2,000 per unit if you met the requirements across the board. What they've decided to do with getting rid of the 3-story height restriction, which kind of limited that Legacy 45L tax credit for multifamily to just garden style homes or townhomes. This opens it up to very large multifamily units, but they reduced the credits unless you are paying prevailing wage. And prevailing wage, if you're not aware, is an amount determined by the government. I believe it's the Secretary of Labor, on basically what union and government wages should be in a specific region or city. So it's usually quite a bit more than minimum wage. It's usually what the unions in that given locale are paying their members.
Gotcha. Again, I think if we think about it from a legislative standpoint, I think we can all see the behavior that they're trying to drive with putting these types of measures in place. But now we kind of want to talk through Energy Star and Zero Energy Homes. So, Sean, I know this is kind of one of your areas of expertise, so I'll let you take it away with
Yeah.
this slide here.
Yeah, no problem. So Energy Star, it has separate processes and requirements for multifamily versus single family. The multifamily program was actually just released about 2 years ago, so it's relatively new. It's still on an earlier version where Energy Star Homes for single families has been around since about 2006. So there's a lot more history with the single family program right now. For multifamily, there are 3 pathways you can go to get certified. You can do an ERI pathway, which stands for Energy Rating Index. And what that does is just offers some more flexibility. The prescriptive pathway is, this home, these are the elements of an Energy Star house or building. You have to follow each of these individual aspects exactly to qualify, where the ERI pathway gives you flexibility in that, like, if you don't have as efficient windows, maybe you add some more attic insulation, it evens itself out. And then for multifamily, there is also the ASHRAE pathway, which utilizes commercial energy modeling, ASHRAE 90.7, to model the house or the building as more similar to how they model commercial buildings like warehouses or hotels. As of right now, Energy Star is based on the reference home, what the scores are compared to. What the prescriptive option is actually a 2012 code building. And what that means is that, once again, if you're building to 2015, 2018 energy codes, you're actually probably exceeding the energy requirements for Energy Star, and you're just not hitting some of the other prescriptive elements of it, one of which are the 2 site inspections. A big part of Energy Star and HERS ratings is that pre-drywall inspection to make sure insulation, ductwork, air barriers are all installed properly. And there's actually was a recent analysis that there's about 50 million homes that were built in the US over the last couple of years that would have qualified for Energy Star certification if they remembered to call somebody out for that pre-drywall inspection. The final inspection is blower door tests, duct leakage testing, and just confirming the things that are in the model are meeting the Energy Star prescriptive checklists. So Energy Star has, for both the single family and the multifamily, has a checklist, which, regardless of whatever pathway you're taking to achieve compliance, that checklist needs to be met in total. Most of it needs to be certified by an Energy Star certifier. There are some options that allow other industry professionals and the builders to certify aspects of the checklist as well.
Got it. So just for my clarification, and maybe there might have been some questions that come up here, for the site inspections, right?
Mhm.
From what we just heard, there's a lot of homes that are already meeting the kind of energy standards. They just didn't take that extra step, didn't know that there was available credits needed. And what is a pre-drywall versus post-drywall like entail? What are you looking for?
Yeah, so the pre-drywall inspection is to look at, as I mentioned, that insulation that's a hard sentence to say. Insulation installation, how well the insulation was installed. Depending on what type of insulation you're using on a building, it can have different ways of installing it to maximize its efficiency. There's some of the nitty gritty details are looking at, like, caulking of base plates, gasketing drywall. There's this prescriptive checklist which needs to be met that just ensures that the standards of building is done to the highest possible quality. And so the pre-drywall inspection generally is a fairly quick one depending on it, and it's also a kind of point of where you're talking to the builder to make recommendations to make sure that they stay compliant for the final test out. That generally goes pretty quick. It's a visual inspection, doesn't take too long. The final test out requires blower door testing and duct leakage testing if that's relevant to the specific building. Those can take a little bit longer, and they need to be done when the home is really close to being completely finished.
So
And
basically, when it's kind of ready to either be leased or sold.
yeah, generally I recommend my clients call in the final inspection about 2 weeks before final test out. So if there's any issues, you can still rectify them before it's too late.
Got it. Got it. So that is the big difference between legacy and post IRA is the need for two site inspections, right? The legacy, which has a 3-year look back, there's only one site inspection needed, and it's at the end of the project, for lack of a better term. And then for this post IRA, 2 site inspections are needed. And then also there's some other considerations that might be needed to make in terms of materials and construction during the design or construction phase. So those are just things to keep into account. One step up from Energy Star homes is zero energy ready homes. So Sean, I'll let you speak to this one as well.
Yeah. So Zero Energy Ready Homes is a newer program by the Department of Energy with collaboration from the EPA. It actually kind of bundles together several different programs into one. So for a Zero Energy Ready Homes, you do have to be already Energy Star certified, as well as the EPA's Indoor Air Plus certified. The efficiency requirements tend to be about 10% more stringent than Energy Stars. So you do have to hit a lower energy model rating. There is, in addition to the Energy Star requirements and the Indoor Air Plus, which I guess I should speak a little bit, that is a program by the EPA to ensure the best possible indoor air quality. Some of the requirements are just installing radon resistant features in the building, using low VOC paints and stains, that sort of thing, just to make sure indoor air quality is as high as possible. It also includes water efficiency standards. There needs, if you're not installing PV, solar photovoltaics, it has to be set up in a way that it's ready to receive solar panels. They also need to be electrical vehicle ready and heat pump ready as of 2024. So those are brand new changes. The photovoltaic ready has been around for a while, but the electrical vehicle and heat pump, and by heat pump, they mean both for heating the house as well as heating your domestic hot water. Those requirements are brand new. And the idea with all of this, the incentivizing, is that these buildings, these homes, they're not yet net zero, but they're in a position where you could install solar panels and the building would be close to, if not net zero. As of right now, there's no separate multifamily version. Multifamily buildings can still be certified as zero energy ready, but it's by a per unit basis, and each unit needs to meet all of the requirements. The multifamily version we should be getting in 2025.
Oh, so they're going to make a new multifamily version, and that makes sense too, because how can an individual dwelling be completely net zero and have access to solar and EV charging stations?
Yeah, so some of those requirements, there is a non-applicable category for that. But it is very difficult. I've done several multifamily buildings for zero energy ready, and it is definitely more difficult to pass on that per unit basis versus the Energy Star multifamily looks at the entire building. So I am looking forward to those new changes up ahead.
Okay. Well, thanks for kind of going into depth on zero energy homes and Energy Star. That's going to be where this incentive ends up here in about 2 or 3 years, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just to add one thing is there are also lots, and I mean lots of other incentives for just outside of 45L for being compliant to these programs.
Like what?
So where I am in Colorado, if you build an Energy Star home, Xcel Energy, our utility provider, will offer another $2,000 to the builders for building to that standard. So you can almost double your incentives just through the local utilities. And the Energy Star website in Leighton has access to a database for all of those extra incentives.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So you're saying basically it's on top of the 45L tax credit moving forward, there's additional incentives for making your home either Energy Star certified or zero energy ready homes.
Yes, yes.
Got it. It's good to know. Good to note. So what's our certification process? How do we go through and make this as simple on a client as possible, right? So we do most of the heavy lifting, and what we do is once we're engaged, we ask for specific documents, right, that are relevant to this incentive. Construction drawings mainly, right? Architectural, MEP, electrical, those types of construction drawings are what we first request. We also need to understand when these units were sold or leased, because as we discussed earlier, the credit is taken in the year that it was sold or leased. So to quantify that, usually for apartments or leases, most apartments have like a rent roll, or some other document certifying, confirming when the units were first rented out. And then for condos and buildings like single family homes, most developers have documentation to support when they sold that building. Once we collect that information, and that's really probably the heaviest lift from a client standpoint. Once we get those documents, we do the energy modeling, right? So Sean and his team actually sit down and input all of the as-built information that you provided, and then they compare it to that reference building. So they're basically building two energy models, and then running an analysis. And based on the energy consumption between those two models, that's where the deduction is actually credit is actually calculated. Okay. And then from that, site inspection and testing is done. I know that Sean mentioned the site inspection. They are fairly non-evasive, right? They let's say that there's a unit, or you have a 200 unit apartment complex. Do we need to see all 200 units? How do we work that, Sean?
Yeah. So the ResNet has guidelines that you can look at one out of every 7 unit types up to 7. So it's a question of how many inspections you need to do is dependent on the total number of unit types and units. And how ResNet defines that, it might be a little bit different than how you as a developer on your building plans define a unit type. But generally not very invasive, and you just need to look at a small subset of the total.
Gotcha. And then for certification, you want to walk us through that as well, Sean?
For the Legacy 45L specifically,
Yes.
or both?
Well, I mean, let's separate it. Let's do both. We'll do legacy first.
Yeah. So after the site inspection, it's basically just going back for Legacy 45L and confirming that that's what was done. There is not quite as much of oversight in that process as there is for Energy Star and Zero Energy Ready homes. For that certification process, the builder has to register with either Zero Energy Ready homes or Energy Star, or both. And because these buildings get put on a register, the benefits that I mentioned earlier that are with building to these higher standards stay for the lifetime of the building. So the builder has to register. I have to submit models and documentations to a quality assurance company that then reviews those and gets those the buildings and models registered with the EPA and DOE.
Gotcha.
Also, the mortgage, the MLS as well. So this actually goes into how the buildings are assessed for value.
Which is one of the benefits you were speaking of for Zero Energy and Energy Star, is that they're actually
Mhm.
more valuable because of these certifications. They can charge more um, for single family homes as well as
Yes.
multifamily. So we do have a question that hopefully we can get answered right now. It's from Riot Kirby. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that first name inaccurately, but are there incentives for single family homes for specific energy efficient upgrades? If so, does Leighton work on those types of incentives? So, um, yeah, I'll let Sean if you want to speak to that, and then I'll follow up.
Yeah, we have our grants division is really good at finding specific incentives unique to each individual project. So for something like that, we can engage with the other one of the other branches of Leighton to help get the best value for our clients. And I think that's one of the things that's really unique about Leighton is we have certified professional engineers on our team. We have these local and state tax incentive experts. We have a huge team to kind of bundle all the opportunities for our clients in one package. So if you're getting interested for the 45L, we can help you find, yes, like heat pump incentives, find the upgrades. Like there's rebates now for doing extra insulation and stretch codes. So there's a lot of opportunities for those incentives that we can help find.
Perfect. We're going to move on here because I want to talk about how you actually claim 45L on the tax return, right? So it's fairly straightforward, right? There is an amendment that must be done for previous tax years. So just like you amend any return for any to add additional value. But for this, you just have to complete Form 8908 or amend Form 3800. And we would work with your CPA ahead of time just to make sure that they're familiar with these forms. Though they are straightforward, if it's your first time seeing them, there's going to be questions, right? So we would make sure that your CPA is well equipped to answer those types of questions and input this return actually, or input this credit actually onto your return. A credit can be taken in the year that the relevant dwelling was sold or leased with a 3-year look back. We've discussed that. But in general, it's a fairly straightforward process to actually applying these credits onto your returns. Okay. Um,
Um, I would
so,
just like to point out in the Q&A, Derek
mhm.
asked a great question earlier about who, as a single family investor, who would qualify for it, them or the general contractor. And just to put some clarity around that is the way the tax code reads is eligible contractor. And how that's been interpreted is whoever owns the building during the construction phase is the eligible contractor. So if you're an investor and you are hiring a GC to do it, you would be the eligible contractor, not the actual contractor, somewhat counterintuitively.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks for clarifying too. That language is a bit hazy.
Yeah.
Is the 5K credit non-legacy and all or nothing, or can a portion of the 5K be granted if not all the requirements are met?
Yeah. Unfortunately, the way the Energy Star and Zero Energy Ready Homes are set up, it is an all or nothing program, which is some of the difficulties with getting it implemented, that you have to meet all of these very specific requirements. They're not very onerous in cost, but they tend to be more onerous in just paying attention to detail. But that's something we can dive into a little bit more towards the end here.
Okay, perfect. One more question we can answer here before we move to the next slide is I think Jack said, are there incentives for electrochromatic glass?
Not that I am aware of.
Gotcha. There might be, but we could certainly look into those.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's
Yeah,
a grants and opportunities
yeah,
job.
yeah. Definitely, definitely look into it. So we're gonna move on here. Wanted to give you kind of a breakdown so you can see what we're speaking of when we're talking about the legacy versus the post IRA stuff. So for multifamily, single family, then you'll see the programs here. The thresholds are what Sean was going into, and then the tax year 2023. The maximum for the legacy is $2,000 per door. Where you'll see here that for tax year 2023 moving forward, if you're Energy Star certified, it's $500 per dwelling. But if you're Energy Star certified and paid prevailing wages, it goes up to 2,500. So it's basically a 5 times multiplier for prevailing wage. Sean, would you like to add any context?
Yeah, well, and that's for multifamily, which is where the nice part is if you're a single family developer, there is no prevailing wage requirements. You get the maximum tax credit regardless of paying prevailing wages or not. That over 30% savings on IECC under the legacy is for manufactured homes. So it's not real, it's not used very often.
We're talking
But
like trailers and RVs, things. Gotcha.
yeah, yeah, mobile homes, that
Mobile
more of
homes. Yep.
that sort of thing. So kind of going back to Natalie's question earlier, is it all or nothing? So yes, for the 5,000, but as I kind of mentioned when going through the requirements for zero energy ready homes, you do need to be Energy Star certified as part of that. And in my experience, almost every home that I've tested for zero energy ready homes, if it's failed zero energy ready homes, it is already qualifying for Energy Star. And so there's usually they can get that incentive if they don't meet the full 5,000. So
Wait, so you're saying, I just want to make sure I understand that correctly, right?
yeah,
So, and I'm sure the same questions might be floating around folks' heads. So, if it's Energy Star certified but not zero energy home ready, you could still receive the Energy Star credit, but just not the zero energy, right? I mean, that's
yep,
pretty
yeah, you'd
straightforward.
get the 2,500 instead of 5,000. It's a little bit of
Yeah,
like shoot for the stars and land on the moon there.
gotcha. Okay, okay. Um, so we kind of want to talk through some testimonials here that we've partnered with, and some examples here. This is one of our clients that we've worked with. You can see the testimonial there. This was um, a client that we worked with and delivered value to pretty quickly. You know, we were talking about our study process, and we were able to really go through, find some credits for them, and get the field inspection done in a relatively short amount of time. Um, and so they kind of talk about some of our processes here in that quote. They didn't know about this tax credit, which is very common, by the way. I would say 80% of the folks we talk to are unaware of this incentive. Um, and then their process is assuming all the risk. What they're meaning by that is we don't charge on an hourly rate here at Leighton. So if something doesn't work out and we don't identify any value, we're not charging the client. So kind of gives you some peace of mind to know that you can kick the tires a little bit and see if this thing works. And you won't be charged unless we actually find value. Move on to another example here. This one is pretty straightforward, but we wanted just to highlight some of the benefit here. So this was a legacy 45L. It was 2 stories and 53 units. Units were placed into service and leased in 2021. And then the systems that were placed in service were also in 2021. So number of units qualified, 53. Available credit, 2,000. So they received $106,000 tax credit for that 53 unit apartment complex that they put up. And Sean, I'll let you speak to
Yeah, I
that.
was going to say this was just one of the most recent clients I worked with. They are a residential, they did garden style apartments across a range from Pennsylvania, Maryland, and West Virginia. Uh, and essentially, we were able to get them, they had 233 qualifying units. We were able to get them this tax credit of 466,000. And with these tax credits, they are applicable. There's no waiting period to answer your question, Matthew. There is a 20-year carry forward. So if you're operating a loss when you build these when you start developing these buildings, you actually have 20 years that you can keep pushing this tax credit forward and use them on your filings going forward there. And yeah, the process for this client, since it was such a diverse area, is I flew into Baltimore and I spent each day going to a different subset, 3 days, just working with the property managers of the owner and inspecting, as I said, like that 1 in 7. Luckily, he kind of just copied and pasted the same buildings over and over again, which made it relatively painless. And with that turnaround time, we had an October 15th deadline. I was out there September 24th, and we were able to get him the report by October 12th. So it was pretty quick turnaround time and relatively painless, I'd say.
Yes. Yeah, this is a great example. Want to throw caution out there. Don't wait till the last minute with tax season coming up.
Yes, please don't.
Yes, we can do them, but your CPAs will not appreciate waiting till the last minute to claim these types of incentives, and not to mention that there's going to be an increased volume on our end come tax season. So, yeah, especially because tax year 2020 is use it or lose it, and for this legacy 45L. Very, very high value potential. So we want to make sure that we're capitalizing, but there's also going to be a lot of folks that are also wanting to make sure that they capitalize. So please don't wait until the last minute. Don't call us. I mean, you can call us in February. We'll do our best to make it happen. But if start thinking ahead now, because tax season's just around the corner. So that is the end of the presentation. We did have some extra or a few questions that we didn't answer. So Sean, let's make sure that we go back here and answer any. I think Kevin Brown had one regarding ownership of a building. What if the actual owner is a PFC and the PFC is a landlord and the developer and tenant under leasehold improvement?
I don't think I understand enough of that question to answer it competently.
We might have to reach back out to get that question answered.
But I can answer Rick's question here. Can
Okay.
the tax credit be taken after the building was built if no previous testing had been done? So the answer is yes for the legacy, but no for Energy Star and Zero Energy Ready homes. The DOE was quite adamant that March they released a technical bulletin, which is pre-drywall inspections must be done. And
there's no way around that, right? Like we can't get creative with some like scopes and going underneath the drywall. It's pre-drywall or nothing, right?
Yeah, it's pre-drywall or nothing. And the reason for that is just that Energy Star checklist has so many specific requirements that you need to get eyes on before drywall is up and hides those elements that there's really no way around it. There was an exemption for a little bit during COVID that has been phased out, and they are very adamant that we're not going back to that, to those ways.
Gotcha. Yeah, we've had a few clients that really wanted us to figure out some creative way to not do the. I mean, because look, the fact is they released the Inflation Reduction Act in 2022, and in 2023 it went into effect, right? So most designs for new construction were already completed. There was no way to go back and like implement some of these additional little small tweaks, let alone go out and think through having somebody come out pre-drywall and post-drywall. So unfortunately, that's just kind of how it was in a lot of these cases, but there needs to be a site inspection pre and post drywall. So Kevin kind of clarified, and it is a unique proposition here. I know we've done public housing often, so I'm sure that the financing portion of it and the ownership portion of it will come into play, but we would take that in a case by case basis and really dive into the specifics of each deal.
Yeah, from my understanding, the individual investors potentially can get access to it, but clearly municipalities aren't allowed to use it. And it is a non-transferable credit, so it's not, you can't sell them on a third market. You can't do allocation with it either.
Yeah, good point. Hopefully that answered your question, but reach back out to us if you want us to dive into some specific examples. We'd be happy to review contracts and all that good stuff. Jack, you said do we offer consulting on Section 48? I'm not sure if grants and incentives does. I don't believe so though.
Yeah, we don't really do offer consulting under that right now. That is something I would really be interested in getting into going forward though.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, look, we appreciate you guys showing up and learning more about the 45L tax credit and a little bit more about Leighton, and glad that you are interested in this incentive. Reach out to us. Kind of like we mentioned that kind of it's consulting is kind of our neck of the woods, and we do a lot of the heavy lifting up front to determine if these projects are viable before we even begin the energy analysis, before we do the site inspection. We do a lot of upfront work to make sure that there is benefit there. So if you know anybody that's looking into this space, please send us our way.
Well, thanks again. A lot of great questions, and yeah, hopefully we can talk more in the future.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sean. Guys, Sean's being humble too. I'm telling you, there's not too many Seans in the world. There's plenty of me's, but there's not too many Seans that can actually deliver these 45L credits. A lot of folks say they can, but when the rubber meets the road, we're very uniquely positioned to be able to provide value here.